Welcome to Sacred Magic. Violet is on a quest to bring sacredness back into our everyday experiences. Anyone can have an extraordinary life when they are able to tap into their sacred magic within. Violet and her guests will be sharing their divine passions, inspirations, and stories of connecting with their sacred magic. We are so happy you have joined us today. Let's get started with your host, the magical creator of Discover Your Spiritual Gifts, Vialet Rayne.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sacred Magic Podcast. I'm your host, Vialet Rayne, and today my guest is Stacey Andon. She has walked through some of the most difficult life experiences and learned how to deeply heal and transform her life into what she calls everyday enchantment. With years of experience as a master life coach and intuitive, she works with incredible clients all over the world. Her unique blend of practical wisdom, intuitive insight offers a fresh perspective on personal growth and self-discovery that keeps it real and embraces all the piece of being messy, soulful human. And I love that. Our internet was having problems, so we had to start over. But we were talking about messy lives because a lot of people believe that if you're spiritual, if you're connected to the divine, whatever your belief, religious background is, that life is beautiful and perfect. And I have found that that is not true. I love the messy because I think our life gets messy from time to time, no matter what we do, and it's part of our experience. And you were sharing with us, Stacey, how your life was messy for quite a while.
Yeah. I feel like there was something, Violet, between like coming into my 30s, maybe my mid 30s. I realized at that point I didn't want to be married anymore to my first husband. And so I went through a pretty, I called it the disentanglement of my former life. That was my name for my divorce. And it was a mouthful because it felt like a mouthful going through it. And then as I was sharing, I've had a lot of childhood trauma. And then my mother, who had mental illness all throughout my life, took her own life in 2019. And so kind of that in my 40s, then on this cusp of like doing so much of my own work and then kind of getting thrust back in to very, very messy grieving. Here's somebody who had a very kind of entangled relationship with my whole life and who is also my mother. And how do you do that? How do you walk through these spaces where it's not just about positive mindset. Okay, I'm going to be okay. Yeah, sure, I'm going to be okay at some point. But in this moment, I don't feel okay. I remember having a complete meltdown in Old Navy 3 days before my mother's funeral. Like, what am I going to wear? I don't even know. I don't even know. But I like allowed myself to have the meltdown, tears, you name it, and let it be like, hey, this is a human experience. We don't always get to do it privately or behind closed doors. It's going to happen sometimes. I don't know. For me, it's happening at an Old Navy. And it was like, okay, I'm just going to allow myself to be really human and offer as much compassion and grace and love as I can in a moment. And that to me is part of how you walk through the messy of humanity.
I think it's also, I think we have to point out that if we don't walk through it, if we don't lean into it, if we don't allow ourselves to have those emotions and feelings, if we
Mhm.
don't allow ourselves to be in that moment, then we stuff it in and we
Yeah.
hold it. And then it becomes later, we have to face it in other ways, whether
Yes.
that's emotional, mental, physical, how it's going to outburst because your body can only hold so much of that. And
Mhm.
so it's okay to have those points in your life where, hey, I'm not okay right now. I'm not going to tell you I'm okay right now. Just
Mhm.
allow me to be in this process for a minute. I just
Yeah.
need to release and kind of sit in this energy a bit because I think that's what our experiences are supposed to be about.
Yeah. I don't, I mean, I'm a very joyful person. I believe joy encompasses all of the whole spectrum of human emotion. So this idea like we're always supposed to be happy, I think sometimes it can just bypass, right, the truth of a moment, which is like right now I'm feeling immense sadness or grief, or I'm feeling anger, and all of those emotions. I mean, that's how we're wired as human beings. These emotions have messages for us as well too. So it's, to me, it's always like, can I feel it first, from, to your point, a very physical, embodied way, without judgment, without analysis. And then on the other side of that, it's like, ooh, I always ask, why are you here? Do you have something? Is there wisdom? Is there something you want to share with me? Is there something need to know in this moment about all of that? And that space, once you allow yourself to be emotional and be in that, to me, there's this gap that we almost create that creates this, I don't know, that to me is where there's so much what I would call the enchantment and the magic hang out, when you allow the soul energy and the human energy to, have a synergy and not try to transcend one, oh, I want to try to transcend my humanity. I don't know. For me, that doesn't work.
Right. And I love that. Whereas some people out there in the world run away, they like
Mm,
run from it or try to escape from it, or
mhm.
they get stuck in that energy where they like, I call it the victim energy, where they
Yeah,
step in and just stay stuck and sit in that.
yeah,
There's a healthy way of moving through it. It is part of those aspects of grief, but it's about moving through it. It's about leaning into it, feeling it, understanding it, and then moving to the next phase.
yeah,
And sometimes as humans, we can get stuck in those phases. We've seen people get stuck for weeks, months, years, lifetimes, right? They
mhm,
just get stuck. So being able to feel that energy and just allow yourself to be. And I love that. Understanding the wisdom that's happening, right? What
yeah.
message do you have for me? What is this about this that I'm learning from? What do I need to take away from this? How do I grow through this? Because
Mhm.
then we don't have those deep wounds that we get stuck in.
Yeah. Well, and then the wound becomes, to me, a scar, right? We might hold these scars and we walk with whatever that is. You're going to carry that in some way, but it's like, is it an open bleeding wound or something that's festering under the surface? Or have you really met it and been in relationship with it different? I think also, too, this is just my experience, that a lot of the spiritual world, it's like, how do we fix? How do we get completely healed? To me, healing is a lifelong practice. So the things that I've gone through, sometimes they come back up again. Nobody likes that. Nobody wants to be like, whoa, wait a second. But this desire, like, I'll use my own life as an example, this desire to have a mother who was like, Stacey, I love you. You're amazing. You're incredible. All these things, that wound might show up for me while I'm on the planet for the rest of my life from time to time. It's okay. And I think sometimes, instead of just, how do I just take a pause and really just hold that part of me that's feeling that and experiencing that right now, rather than trying to do something, and this is what clients do, and I've done myself, try to do something in the present moment, right? That fixes that. And as far as I know, there is no fix. So you just, to me, again, it's that awareness and presence and compassion. And interestingly enough, I do have some mediumship skills that have developed. Well, I think they were actually with me all my life, but I didn't feel brave enough to really lean in until the last 10-ish years. And my mother and I have an incredible relationship on the other side. We've gone through, it's like, I don't know what you would call that, but some kind of other realm therapy together and worked out our stuff. And so I feel very much loved by her now. And yet also too, it's like this paradox, like the human in me sometimes can get tripped up by that. So to me, it's like, when you can be in the truth of you right now, you don't have to, like you said, this like positive vibes only over top of like, I'm really angry right now, or I'm really upset about something right now. Like, okay, take a pause and be with yourself and get curious. What is that? And how can you meet that with such a love and, again, acceptance? Acceptance doesn't mean you have to like it, but acceptance means it's welcome. There's nothing I'm not afraid, right? Am I not afraid to feel? I don't know if I use too many negatives. Sorry if I'm getting, yeah, maybe if I'm negating the point I'm trying to make. But that idea of like everything is welcome, that is an experience for me here. I have the strength, I have all of what I need within me to walk through. And again, not that life is always dark and what have you, but even traffic jam or something unexpected, right? That happens that can create a little bit of kind of disruption in the plan for the day.
I understand that when we're going through those moments in our lives for healing, I always tell clients forgiveness, if you can forgive, you release the attachment or the chains that attach you to that situation, that person. Forgiveness is not about, hey, I think it was okay in what they did, that it was okay in what happened. Forgiveness is about, look, I'm letting this go because I don't want to be attached to this energy anymore, and I want to heal and move through it. Versus, a lot of people avoid forgiveness, and forgiveness is a big lesson in itself. It teaches us so much in that moment if we can really lean in and find the grace, compassion to be in that moment. And forgiveness doesn't mean you forgive them and then next week you go hang out with them and it's going to be different, because typically what you've experienced is who they are. And it's going to continue that way. Have you found that in your work too, Stacey?
Yeah, so I say forgiveness is my favorite F word. And so there was something years ago, Violet, that I read by Guru Singh, and I don't know if you've heard of him. He is just beautiful, energy on the planet, and he loves to take words and kind of dissect them for their meaning. And he takes forgiveness and he says, forgiveness is for giving to yourself. Giving to yourself, like to your point, instead of carrying whatever it is around energetically, you're entangled with somebody else's energy that way. What can you give yourself in this moment to release, again, this holding of all of this kind of connection that is probably not feeling good and feels really heavy somewhere in our bodies or in our hearts. So I absolutely, and that to me, even just with my example with my mom, it's like, how do I forgive somebody, especially as a young child, right, who didn't get her needs met? It's like, where's the space for that when you really think about it? But it's not about saying, hey, what you did was okay. And it's also, there's this weird space. I don't know if you find this too, but it's also like when I allow myself to, because usually what I'm doing is I'm holding something against myself. I should have done it different. I should have done something, right? If I did X, Y, and Z, it wouldn't have worked out this way. And so I find that a lot of times under the forgiving other people and letting them be the messy humans that they are, doing the best they can in a moment, that I need that same forgiveness for myself, because I've had so many experiences over the years. It's like, oh, why did I do that? I should have known better, right? Like that refrain in our head. And I think that for a lot of, at least my clients and the people that I work with, the forgiving of ourselves is the harder part.
It is. And it's so important because I think not only do other people expect us to be perfect in what we do, and I really say that because I've been hurt by people that wanted me to be perfect, and I'm not perfect. I'm human, right? I'm just as human as everybody else. I'm still working through all my stuff, my wounds, my pains. And when we meet somebody or we have a relationship or a friendship with somebody, we don't always know their wounds and pains. It's not like you get a book before you meet them that says, "This is Violet. These are the things that she's been through. These are the triggers that
This is
she
true.
has that come
That'd be
up."
helpful. It would be helpful if we all had like a little like cheat sheet ahead of time.
With a disclosure statement.
Yes,
That,
exactly.
you might see this come out because of this. And I think if we really knew that, wouldn't
Mhm.
we be a little bit more compassionate? Wouldn't
Yeah.
we be a little bit more graceful and forgiving and loving if we kind of
Mhm.
knew that? And so I think one of the big lessons is when we get hurt or something happens, is really stepping back and going, I don't know the whole story. So I'm
Mhm.
just going to hold space and love for them and send
Mhm.
them love and light, and just know that I may not know the whole story of what's happening here.
It's like my favorite metaphor about iceberg. When I was in the business world, we ran up against that all the time, right? People sending snarky emails to each and getting upset. And it was like, okay, if everybody pause for a moment, you have no idea if your coworker just had a fight with their spouse and was crying on the way in, or is taking care of a parent who's like, doesn't remember who they are and struggling with that. I mean, there's so many things below, I always say below the waterline, to your point, that we don't know. And if we did, like, that is kind of my goal in life. And I think it's easy when people make it easy for us to love them and be compassionate. I really think that it takes deeper work and deeper showing up for ourselves to be like, can I do this when it's somebody I'm really having a hard time with? And not always, because I would never want to excuse people's poor behavior. I generally find that there's something interesting in it for me. And I don't know, Violet, if you're familiar at all with Byron Katie's work, but Byron Katie she has this kind of process for looking at our thoughts and looking at it what our mind is offering. And one of the pieces of this process, they're called turnarounds. And there's a turnaround always that has to do with going back to ourselves. So if I was like, oh, Violet should have never sent me that email or whatever, whatever it is, then it's like, but what about me? Like, ooh, maybe I'm not meant to be sending email. Oh, it's like, oh yeah, I can think of a couple times where I just fired off some emails and I was angry and let some of that energy go at other people that wasn't meant for them. There's something like, and again, this isn't meant for all of us to do spiritual work on ourselves so we can be around people behaving badly. This is just, to me, the way I look at the world. When I take a pause, I'm like, oh, why is that really? Because sometimes people could do things and it doesn't bother me at all. But other times, if somebody's doing something, it's really getting to me. And I'm like, what is there for me that I'm like, oh, yeah, this is juicy. I'm always about, this is information. I really practice trying not to judge myself or other people. It's like, what? Why? Oh, I did that. That's so interesting. I just thought that, or I did that. Where did that come from? Rather than, right, the shame spiral that most of us were taught, or whatever, the hamster wheel of just kind of obsessing. I like to get myself off of that and just be like, oh, I'm a spiritual scientist, and I'm going to get curious about where that motivation or where that behavior came from.
I love that, where you look at it as, oh, this is juicy. There's something here
Yeah.
for me to learn and be curious about. I think that's awesome, because you're right. A lot of times we're judging, being very critical with ourselves, very hard, because what we say to ourselves
Mm,
is things that we would never say to someone else. We're really kind of mean and to ourselves. So I like the fact of looking at it in a different way. So
yeah.
you talk about how to navigate self-truths versus bypassing them. Talk a little
Mm,
bit about how do we navigate self-truths and not run
yeah.
away from them.
So it kind of goes hand in hand with what I was saying a little bit earlier around this. Like, I love to do like a little couple check-ins with me over the course of a day. It's like, ooh, I'll stop and I'll be like, what's my mind thinking right now? Right. And it's like, oh, I don't want to do whatever the next thing is or whatever. And I'm like, oh, and again, oh, that's so interesting. How does my body feel right now? And it's like, oh, I have tightness in my shoulders. And again, I'm not trying to do anything. I'm not like, oh, I need to fix this, right? It's just like you're you're checking in so you have a better sense of like, what is it like to be me in this moment? And that, what is it like to be me? Oh, I'm a little angry. Maybe it's left over from yesterday. Something happened or whatever, or I'm feeling a little extra tired today. That to me is being in the truth of who we are. What is it like to be Violet in this moment? When you ask yourself that question right now versus tomorrow or the next day or the day, you're going to get different answers. So to me, it's like when we're willing to be in the truth of like, ooh, I know I'm supposed to put a smile on and be happy. I mean, that was my childhood. Put a smile on and go out and say hi to, this aunt or this uncle or this neighbor and hug them and right? It was like nobody said, Stace, like, how do you actually really feel? Do you want to do this or not? And I think for a lot of us, to your point about perfection and people pleasing, we will do things that we don't actually want to do because we think, oh, well, I can't, that person might not like me if I say no, or they won't understand, or I'll be judged or criticized. And I think that the more we allow ourselves to be imperfect, messy. We're going to get angry sometimes. We're going to get cry in the old Navy. The more that permission for that, I think that then we can really find that peace. Most of us, right, are really, every client for the most part says, I want to feel free and I want to feel at peace. And so, how do you do that? I think instead of trying to change, oh, I should just make myself happy, I should smile. Like, no, it's like, let yourself be angry right now in this moment. You don't need to go tell it 20 million people. Just it with yourself, have that kind of practice, that kind of transparency and openness where anything is allowed. And you use, like we've been talking about, this curiosity lens. Okay, this is curious. Oh, when I cram my schedule with 10 things on a Monday, hmm, I don't feel that great. So instead of trying to, do something to energize, like 3 cups of coffee or a Red Bull, okay, maybe I'll change my schedules around a little bit on Monday. That is more that is more in line with what would really feel good for me. When you can see things like that without the judgment, you can make little tweaks. And I think little tweaks are the answer to life. There's beautiful big gestures every once in a while, but if you really want that peace and that freedom and again, that sense of being grounded and connected to all the beautiful, magical things that are also on this planet, allowing yourself that little bit of those gaps in that space and that really truthful conversation. And I have found that when I can be truthful with myself, the people around me, my relationships flourish because I'm not trying to fix them. I'm not trying to manage their emotions. They're allowed to be truthful too. Oh, you don't like this? Okay. So that's an interesting thing. What do you need? Can I support you in a way? Do you need some space? And we're not trying that, there's a lot of codependency that a lot of us got taught, and it breaks that away and it allows people to really, again, flourish as emotional, spiritual beings.
I love that. I love that. So, how do we make our intuition easier?
Ooh, the easy button. I know
Easy.
everybody's talking about, I don't know, hot girl summer or this summer, this time out of my summer, spring, fall, easy button. That is my way. So a lot of times, right, there's so many ways, and I love, and I'm sure you do this and you offer this as well too. There's so many ways that we can connect with our intuition. And to me, the intuition is kind of the gatekeeper for us to really create the things we desire, right? These are the ways when we go in and we listen and we connect, then we remember there's this whole big, beautiful, magical world. So a lot of times people get really like, oh, well, Stacey, you know how to do it, or Violet, you know how to do it. I don't know how to do that. I can't do that. I always say start simple, and I actually use this practice most of the time myself. It's like in the morning, I say, show me the signs. I'm open. I'm whatever sign, if it's a bumper sticker, a song on the radio, I'm open to all the guidance. I always am asking, share, 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 share. And I also will say, like, I go out every day for a walk. And this is the way I ground myself. I talk to the deer and the foxes, and they talk to me and they come search me out. And I will say to them, what wisdom do you have for me in this moment? And I think, again, we can make it really complicated. I love oracle cards. I love doing readings, but you don't need a 20 card spread. You can really drill it down to, one thing, a couple of things. What's most important in this moment? Because in the next moment and the moment after, you can always ask. And if a sign doesn't feel clear, if you pull an oracle card or you get a message and you're like, I'm not sure, I say, ask again. Ask for clarification. If your mind needs more information, we don't have to drag it along in the spiritual realm. We can absolutely like work with that as well too. So that's kind of in a very short synopsis. I think we can way overcomplicate, and not that I don't enjoy all of the intuitive superpower tools, you name it. But if it's overwhelming or you're just getting started and it feels intimidating, start super simple.
Yeah, because I believe that spirit, God, your guides, whatever you believe in, is always communicating with you. You may
Yeah.
not notice it. And I think just by setting the stage of what guidance do you have gives you some awareness and an open mind to look for those messages
Yeah.
every day. Whereas sometimes we get really distracted with the world outside and they're talking to us all the time, but we're not noticing it because we're busy kind of doing our thing. And they're like, "Ah, I'm really trying to get their attention. Why are they not paying attention?" Right. So
Exactly.
just being aware and open to receive messages, I think is a beautiful, easy way to do that.
Yeah.
So how do you trust your own path? Like a
Hmm.
lot of people ask me a lot of
Great question.
times of, am I on my path? Am I going in the right direction? And I know what my answer is.
Hmm.
But I would love to hear what your answer would be.
Okay, people ask me this all the time. And I've asked myself this multiple times, sometimes multiple times in a day before. Wait, and what am I doing? Am I doing it right? I mean, that's kind of what my brain is always offering. Are we doing it right? And so to that question, I always say, life's not like, I think about going to school and, you overslept and you missed the school bus. And then you're in a world of trouble, maybe with a parent or how you're going to get there and all the things. If you miss the bus, I always say there's another bus right behind it. So if you take a detour and you're like, oh, let me try this out over here, life's going to come back always and be like, here I am, here I am, here I am. So I always believe and know that we're not missing our best life, or we haven't missed our best path life because, hey, we were asleep or we were busy doing something. It will always, just like that next wave, right? If you're a surfer, it's going to come back around and invite us back to play that way. And I think, again, the way we practice trusting is w- so many of us hear, because I work with lots of clients, they're like, oh, I hear the messages. I just don't always trust, right? Because I don't see it. And I was like, when you go to the gym, if you're like start a workout routine or something else, it's like when you first do that bicep curl, it's awkward. It doesn't feel so comfortable. You're like, am I doing it right? And you practice. And I think that that's what trust is about. It's like we're going to come with an intention of practicing, really trusting our own self, and then doing little tiny things in the course of a day that strengthen that do another, right? Like practice that thing over and over again in ways that meet us where we are. If you are just starting this practice out, then I wouldn't say, hey, jump 20 feet over here. It's like, you just start with like, oh, I'm just going to be open to a message, or maybe I'm going to pull an oracle card every day for the next 30 days and see what that is. And then ask, is there an action? What is the next step? Or is there a step that will help strengthen my trust in myself or whatever this is. And whatever feels the safest, I always call it kind of like low hanging fruit, start there. Whatever feels like, if you want to practice your intuition and trusting it, do it in places where you feel like there's not a huge impact. And you can play around, you can experiment, you can try it out. Like, for example, this is so easy and simple. The next time your phone dings at you, before you look, play the game of, ooh, who do I think that is? Right? What is the energy of that ding or that email or whatever? Do I think it's my partner, my child, my best friend? You can do things like that that just are fun and ways that, again, if you get it wrong, there's no impact, right? Nobody's harmed in this. And you will learn over time, the more you practice, you're like, oh, this is really, really cool. A lot of the times I do know who is calling me or texting me or that kind of thing. And so that to me, when you do it in an arena where, again, it's like the bumpers on the bowling alley, then you're taking the pressure off. Like, oh, I have to make this work out. Otherwise, it's not any good for me. Like, let's just cut the pressure. In places like that. And you'll feel you get braver as you, right? The more you do, right? You do 5 pound bicep curl, then you go to a 10 pound or whatever it is. It will naturally, the progression of that will invite you again and again as you need it, where you are.
When I started tapping into my intuition, the one thing I learned is the best way to develop your intuition is all play, creativity, imagination. So when you were a kid and you were daydreaming and they told you, stop daydreaming, it's a waste of time. Daydreaming is that playful way of connecting into your intuition. It also leads you into being really good at meditation, because if you're really good at daydreaming and visualizing stuff, it's really going to help you go into meditation. And Stacey's right. When I first started really wanting to develop, because it does take practice, I worked in an office building where there were 3 elevators. And I would literally go out to the elevator when I went to work, and I'd close my eyes and guess which door was going to open. Now, same idea.
Absolutely.
there's no if I get it wrong, who cares? Nobody else knows. I'm doing this in my head every day. And what I can tell you is, after doing that for several months, I could guess what elevator was going to open. And you know how excited you get when you get those confirmations of, ooh, I got it. And when I didn't get it, I would always think about, okay, how did my body feel? How did it feel in my body? What was I thinking? What was I getting? Because that helps you kind of align to the energies that are talking to you, so that you really get really good at guessing. I also guessed traffic lights. So before I would get to a traffic light, I would guess, okay, it's going to be red, or it's going to be yellow, or it's going to be green when I get to this point. I got really good at guessing those two. And then when I got really good at that, I would ask Spirit to clear the way, clear the traffic lights, make me hit green most of the time. And I could really, I won't say manipulate, but I really kind of, when I was running late or on a tight schedule, I'd be say, warp time for me, make those lights green. And then when I would get there, I would thank them for doing that. Or parking spaces. Help me get a front parking space today. I got lots of stuff to do and I'm just running in and out. And I always say thank you when they do that, because I confirm, thank you, you heard me. Thank you for helping me today. Thank you for me. Those are all fun, easy ways. And what if you don't get the front parking space? It's not going to hurt you to walk. You were going to have to walk anyways. But when you do it enough, you'll find they're listening to you. And more often than not, I don't park very far from things. And I'm always like, thank you for my great parking space. I really appreciate it.
My husband says I have a parking spot angel. He's like, we always get the spot out front when we're with you. And I think of it as having a very specific guide in that. And that could be another fun way to play too, right? If having somebody to be like, hey, help me with this, which I always think is really is fun. And Violet, you sharing that reminds me of something years ago when I was at my master coach retreat, like the culmination of the program, and Martha Beck, who was my teacher and mentor, she and I had a very interesting conversation because there was some equus horse coaching going on in while we were there, and this horse spoke to me, and I totally it was out in the field, and it was like, I'm going to be your horse, and I'm like, no, all the horses that are being used for this are over here, but this horse kept talking to me all day, all day, all day, all day. And so anyway, it ended up, short story, it ended up being this horse and me in this ring, and it was quite volatile because as soon as that horse showed up, I was like, oh my gosh, it's true. Like again, this big part of like I was questioning all day, trusting, trusting, trusting. And the next day when I did some coaching with Martha about it, one of the things she pointed out was like part of what your mind is attaching to is that it works 100% of the time. She said, "Do you know that in baseball, and I am a baseball fan," she said, a really good hitting average, meaning when a batter comes up to the plate, how often do they get a hit? It's like 0.333, right? Or point 0.4. Like if you get that, like, so 4 out of 10 times somebody's making a hit is like a phenomenal player. So she's like, but you are asking your intuition and the guides and everything else that it has to be a 10 out of 10 every time. Otherwise, it doesn't, it's not working right, or you can't believe it, or you can't trust it. And there was something about that message that stuck with me these years later. It's like, to your point, like especially in places where it doesn't have any impact, we're just playing around. But even when it is something where I'm like, I don't know, I'm getting this nudge and I have no proof of any of this, and I'm just going to go out and take a leap of faith and trust, then to me, I remember that and I'm like, and it's okay, because if it doesn't work out the way I think my intuition is guiding me, then I'm just going to be guided in an even better direction. And I let that kind of settle out any of my doubt, because I think you're right. There's so often we will get really, really good at it. And it doesn't have to be perfect either for us to be very highly intuitive.
I love that. I love that. And I love the trust factor, because I think that is so important, because spirit's guiding us. And people ask me all the time, am I on path? Am I going to choose the wrong thing? And my answer is, there is no wrong answer.
Mhm.
There is no wrong choice. There is no wrong answer. You're going to make a choice and you're going to go out and go that way. And if you choose something that leads you in a different direction, Spirit's always going to move you back in line. You might take the long way around. You might take the wrong exit and have to wind around and get back on, but you're not going to go very far off track before they're going to bring you back. And for some people, they're like, well, I don't want to take the exit. I want to be straight on. I get that perfection of I want to, but we forget that this experience is not about the finish line.
Yeah.
It's about the process of the journey. And how do you know that by taking that exit for a few minutes that you don't pick up a golden nugget of some kind along that path, and just allow that to happen, because there is no wrong answer. There's no wrong path. We are, we're guided, and if you're following, and there are those people, I get that do the same thing every day, nothing changes. They're in this hamster wheel, right? They're not reflecting, they're not thinking about it. But what if that was their choice, right? It is their choice to choose that. And what if that experience is perfect, just as it is for them in this lifetime, we have to look at that and go, well, they're making the best choice for them. And maybe there's some nuggets in there that we don't see or realize. And that's okay too, right? It's not our experience, it's theirs. So don't be so hard on yourselves. Allow yourself to have a mess, to be a little messy.
The messy is where the magic hangs out. To me, the enchantment piece of my life, which again, the synchronicities are just off. I mean, that's not the topic of this podcast, but I have so many examples of that. It's like they hang out where we are truthful, human, messy selves. And I think everybody thinks, oh, it has to be perfect in order for the magic or the miracles to happen. I'm like, no, I just think just keeping it real. And again, to your point, some people do kind of get stuck in a loop. And I've always said to myself, it's like if the time is eternal, right? And we can practice as long as we want. Some of us are like, oh, what would it be like to master whatever? We're like going to really go deep into something. And to your point, I always say, I trust everybody here can navigate whatever it is that they need to in any given moment. And so I don't need to jump in and be like, oh, you need to do this, or this is how to do it. Because I love your thing. Your answer is there is no right or wrong way to do life. It's your way. And I think also too, a lot of times it is very choose your own adventure and spirit, whatever themes that are in your life can play out in a lot of different places, whether it's relationship or career, whichever way you kind of go, a lot of that stuff's going to show up no matter what. So
I love that. I love it. Well, Stacey, share a little bit about how people can find you and some of the things that you offer.
sure, I would love to. Thank you for asking. Anytime, I always start with my website, which is staceyandon.com. I offer individual coaching sessions and programs. They're focused on this kind of leap of faith, like really being truthful and messy and coming in and, maybe you're pondering a big question like, do I want to change careers or do I want to be in this relationship anymore? And how do I use my intuition more, discerning or specifically those kinds of things. So I absolutely love working with one-on-one clients. And I also have a group that's out on Facebook called Everyday Enchantment. It is free to be in there, and I'm always doing fun things, videos, oracle cards, talking about all the things, you name it. If I'm doing a in-person event, all of that gets shared there as well too. And it's just a fun place to hang out doing this kind of living. That's what I always say. It's like I want community to be able to be feeling like there are places where you can, show up like this and people like, yay, this is awesome. This is great. And I also do oracle readings on Zoom and as PDFs and things like that. I'm a huge channel for messages in this lifetime. So if you're looking for a message and you want it to be easy, I always say, that is something else that I offer. And that is, again, if you contact me through my website.
Awesome. Well, it's been so great chatting with you today. What a
Ditto.
fun conversation. I really have enjoyed it. So thank you for taking the time to come in and meet with me today.
Violet, thank you so much. I love, love, love. I feel like, I don't know, I think we both would feel this way as people doing podcasts and interviewing and things like that. To me, when you get to have a conversation like this, as much as it is for everybody listening, I always get my own gems as well too. So that's just so much fun.
I love that. We're going to have you come back and talk about enchantment and the
Oh,
mask. I think that
yes.
would be an awesome show. So I'm just
I would
putting
love
that
to.
out there. We'll have to have you back next year talking about enchantment through the mask, because I think everybody kind of experiences some of that and give them a new perspective. So I love that.
I'm in. I'm in.
All right. I love that. Well, thank you for watching Sacred Magic Podcast. Please like, comment, and follow us on your favorite platforms. Know that when you do that, it just helps other people find us and reach us. And we love to hear what you thought of the podcast and the conversation. So please let us know. Thank you so much and have a sacred and magical day.